Sia lodato Gesù Cristo e avanti con Maria. Buona e santa giornata a tutti voi cari figlioli nel
May
santo
Jesus be
cuore di
praised,
Gesù
and
e
onward
Maria,
with
nel
Mary.
cuore
Good and
castoro
holy day
di
to
San
you all, my dear
Giuseppe.
children,
Ben ritrovati
in the
alla
sacred hearts
nostra
of Jesus and
rubrica
Mary,
mattutina
and in the most
Santi e
chaste heart of
Profeti.
Saint
Oggi è
Joseph.
lunedì
Well, hello
9
again with
dicembre.
our
Siamo
morning
ancora avvolti
feature,
dalla
Saints
gioia
and
di
Coffee.
questa grande
Today's
festa che fino a
Monday,
ieri
the
ha
9th of
creato questo
December,
ago
and we're
di
still
fedeli
basking in the
di
joy of the
movimento e di
wonderful
questo
celebration we had
incontro che
yesterday
c'era
in
avuto
Milan,
ovviamente
in
nel
Assago,
sud, ma
with the
poi
faithful,
per via anche dei
of the
costi
small
sopravvenuti in
remainder,
questo
and they were
periodo
only those
pasquale
from central and
per
northern
Natale
Italy.
si
There were a
manifestano
few from central and
si
southern Italy,
manifestano
of
ed è
course,
bello vedere uno
but
sguardo
few also
silenzioso
because of the
per questa
prohibitive
grande
costs
pasquale la
at this
stracolma di
pre-Christmas time.
gente
And it's
ma
beautiful to
veramente
see the
significativo sul
overall
valore
picture, especially from the
naturalmente
altar.
potremmo dire a
The
margine
hall
di
was
questo
packed
nostro
with
momento ci
people,
torneremo ancora
but
così
truly
le
you're left
immagini
speechless.
rendono un po' l'idea ma fra qualche istante
There's so much we
vedremo
could say
delle
about that,
immagini che
but we'll come back
arrivano
to it
dal
in a moment.
centro
For now, the
dell'altare
images,
vedete tutta la sala
they give a bit of
stracolma
an idea,
soprattutto quando
but
si
in a
avvicina
moment
la
we'll see the
fine è
images
veramente
coming
uno
from the center
spettacolo
of the
e
altar,
dicevo
and you'll
quando
see
dico
the whole
ci
hall
giriamo sul
overflowing,
fondo perché questo è
especially when the
questo
little flags
racconto
are raised.
profetizzato
It's
senza ombra
truly a
di dubbio
spectacle.
senza ombra di dubbio
In a moment, we'll
racconta
return to that
come non
because
vale
this is the small
argumento è
Catholic
il
remnant
piccolo Cristo
prophesied, without
profetizzato
a shadow of a
niente
doubt.
meno che
Without a
davanti a
shadow of a
Cristo
doubt, contra
sta
factum non valet
Benedetto
argumentum. It's the
XVI.
small
Ora queste
prophesied
immagini ci sono
remnant,
belle ma non
no less
rendono
than by
l'idea
Paul
del
VI
momento
and
dove
by
inizi. Ecco, così si comincia a
Benedict
capire.
XVI.
Guardate, c'è un'intera
Here,
folla,
these images are
un'intera
beautiful,
folla
but they don't
presente.
quite capture the
Qui abbiamo noi
atmosphere.
sacerdoti
You see, right
che
at the
hanno
beginning, that's when it
partecipato.
starts
Ecco,
to
c'è
become
un'immagine di
clear.
spalle, ma fra un momento
Look,
le
there's a
vedrete.
huge crowd
Hanno
there. That's us, the
partecipato tutti
priests
i
who
fedeli con
participated.
grande
Here, more
entusiasmo, con
images from
grande
behind,
gioia
but you'll see them properly in a
al
moment.
raduno
All the
che alla
faithful
fine di tutto ci ha
participated with
cantato
great
il coro Resto
enthusiasm,
Cattolico
with great
presente a
joy
Milano. Ecco,
at
allora
the rally, which in
questo
the end turned out to
è
be the small
così,
remaining
è
Catholic
davvero una
presence in
processione alla
Milan.
Statua della Madonna, è l'omaggio floreale, ecco questo è l'omaggio
This
floreale,
is the
sono
moment
immagini
when the
trasmesse
sentinels
sulla regia
process the
con la mia
statue of Our Lady.
collaboratrice
It's the
imporranno le
floral
immagini
tribute.
dal
These are
fondo
close-up images.
perché mi
Now
si
the
dice che invece è
director,
involuti, ma io non
with my
riesco a vederlo qui.
collaborator, will
Questo è
impose the
l'ingresso
images from the
dovuto,
back
questa è
because I'm
l'immagine,
told to read
guardate
the
voi non riesco a
minutes,
guardare
but I
veramente,
can't
c'è un
see
po'
them
poca
here.
luce oggi perché Milano è coperta,
This
piove,
is
quindi
the
non
image.
riesco a
Oh
leggere
well,
bene
you
i
do it.
punti perché
I
non ci
can't
sono,
look
ma
because
come
there's
ci
little
sono
light today,
formiche
because
non riesco a
Milan is
leggere.
overcast,
Ecco,
it's
guardate queste
raining, so I
immagini,
can't
diciamo
read the minutes
effettuate,
properly
forse
because
così
they're
avrete
written like ants.
un'idea,
I can't read
guardate
them.
che cosa c'è, non so,
But
ecco,
look at this image.
vorrei dire siamo
Let's freeze
incuriositi
frame
dalla
it. Maybe this gives an
prosecuzione,
idea.
voglio
Look what's
dire,
there. I
sarebbe
don't know.
opportuno a mio avviso se non si
I'd say we're in
volessero
crisis. Where's the
ridicoli banali
crisis?
e
Dunno.
persino anche imbroglioni,
It would be
chiarezza
advisable,
di
in
dire
my
che
opinion,
Donatella ha
if you
finito il
don't want to
suo
look
operativo
ridiculous,
Donatella,
banal, and even
che il
deceitful,
piccolo resto non
to stop
esiste più,
saying that Don
che questa
Minutella has
opera
finished his
è
work,
finita ed
that
è
Don
morta,
Minutella
perché
is in
mi
crisis,
sembra,
that the small
effettivamente
remainder no
bisogna un
longer
minimo di
exists,
decoro
that this is a
mentale
work that
e
is
i
finished
suoi
and dead.
secoli dovrebbero
Because it seems to me
riconoscerlo
that
e
if there are
ovviamente ci si
people with
sta
a
più o
minimum
meno
of mental
finendo. Almeno
decency and
stando a queste
conscience,
immagini,
there it
vedere
is.
l'immagine forse
They should
migliore è
acknowledge that
quando
they're probably
si
wrong,
muovono le
at least
bambine,
so
perché per me
far.
quella era
At
proprio
least judging by these
l'emozione
images, I'd like to see
che il
the
momento,
image.
il
Maybe I can
minuto
see it when the little flags
29:47,
move, because for me that's the most
dopo.
emblematic of all.
Ecco, queste immagini,
I'm told the moment
insomma, non
is at
rendono come quelle che
minute
vedevamo l'altra volta, di solito quando tu
29:47.
vieni, diciamo,
These
dall'altare si
images don't
vedeva
do it
tutto il
justice compared to
spettacolo
what we saw from the
meraviglioso,
altar.
dopo da vicino
Maybe
però
it's because my eyes were
quando
full
mi
of
sono reso
tears.
conto, migliaia di
From the
fedeli
altar, you could
presenti
see a real
all'incontro
spectacle of little flags.
a
I wasn't too
Milano.
close,
È stato un
but
momento
those
di
who were
grazia, un
there
momento di
realized
festa,
it.
di gioia
Thousands
e
of
soprattutto un
faithful
momento di
present at
incontro.
the
Ecco,
meeting in
perché poi
Milan.
nel silenzio
It
di
was a
quei
moment of
momenti,
grace, of
questo
celebration, of
va
joy, and
considerato,
above all, a Catholic moment.
questo aspetto
That's
come
what I'd
direi
like to say.
clamoroso.
The
È
total silence of
clamoroso
the
questo
media, that
aspetto
also needs to
stabilito,
be
per carità,
considered. This
libero
aspect is, I'd
di
say,
parlarne, a
quite
me ci
clamorous,
mancherebbe altro, però in una stagione di profonda
outrageous,
crisi come
even in in a state governed by the rule of law. Of course, everyone is free to talk about it or not, heaven forbid. But in a season of profound crisis like that of Italian Catholicism, where statistics show that Italians no longer go to Mass, that disaffection towards the sacraments is overwhelming, yesterday in Milan, yet again, because this isn't the first meeting, there was an overwhelming participation of the faithful on the 8th of December. We're live.
Eccoci di nuovo in linea, è successo qualcosa che non riusciamo a spiegare, ringraziamo la regia che ha cercato di provvedere immediatamente. Vi dicevo quindi che
Here we are back online. Something happened that we can't explain, thanks to the director who tried to fix it immediately. So I was saying that in the scandalous silence of, sorry for this issue, the signal's fine, so please be patient. I was saying that at this meeting, at a time of crisis for Catholicism, I'm talking about the gathering because this was discussed yesterday in Milan, of the small Catholic remnant, the only true small Catholic remnant. Let them accept it. It is here that the path willed by the Holy Virgin exists, in this small Catholic remnant that walks in the light of God. In God's grace, walking in Catholic truth. This was the first little Catholic remnant. Now, at minute 56, the director shows you, in my opinion, the most emblematic image of this gathering. Minute 56 is the one in which we see the waving of the small flags by all the faithful of the little remnant. It's always, for me, the most emblematic image because it manifests the vitality, the joy, the effervescence, the charisma of this small remnant walking in the light of Catholic truth. From this point of view, my dear children, I find it truly emblematic that the media never mention it. We've held gatherings in Milan, Florence, Venice, Bologna, Rome. We've even done 2 in Rome. We've filled the trade fairs. We fill the halls with faithful followers of the small remnant. And yet the media doesn't mention it. The media don't talk about it, and they're free to do so. The problem is that then they come banging on my front door in little Nazareth or at my house. Makes you think since they don't mention it at all. But if they don't talk about this, and then they have to keep telling the same old story about a Don Minutella kidnapping women, those ridiculous farcical things, which unfortunately people who don't have serious information fall for, then they're a disgrace. Then they're doing it on purpose. Then from a purely professional point of view, they're dishonest. Because if they decide not to talk about us at all, that's one thing. But if instead they don't talk about these gatherings, they don't show any images of this small group that meets in Italy with such enormous numbers. And it's no coincidence that they crack down so hard on the rallies we hold abroad, because they don't want what was born in Italy to take root elsewhere. And instead of this, look at these images. Please, could the director put up that previous image? Because for me, it's the most emblematic. Understanding the media silence, which clearly keeps quiet, taste, censura, is truly ideological censorship, Masonic censorship of the truth. Hold on a minute, please, director. Look, I invite you to look at those who were so many yesterday, because this also needs to be said. It wasn't everyone. This isn't the whole small remainder. This is a partial presence of the small remainder, because thousands of faithful, the true ones of the small remainder, had to stay home for many reasons. Because the costs are prohibitive at this time, because some are unwell, because they can't come for many other reasons. And yet the hall was full yesterday. So the media silence is already a great victory on our part. They fear us. That's why, look, let's freeze the image. What I'm saying is going back a bit again. You see people arriving at the bottom. The image is taken from a flat angle, in the sense that the altar wasn't raised. It wasn't entirely raised. But if you look closely at these images, you see people arriving right to the back. There were also people at the sides. This is the people of the little remnant. What do? I appeal to the powers and media because they listen and get the message. What are you planning to do? Let us know. Still pretending all is fine? Tough luck. Or do you want to promote and support the other little remnants that are trying with all their might to be born? By saying Mass is valid too. In union with Pope Francis, when you enter church, you don't mention his name. Is this your personal choice? Or, I don't know, there are continuous appeals to Cardinal this and Cardinal that, precisely those who elected Bergoglio with the complicity of the world's powerful forces. We need to acknowledge this and unite in accepting it. This is the small remainder that Paul VI spoke of and that Benedict XVI spoke of. It doesn't matter that the media don't talk about it. For us, it was wonderful to live this season yesterday of grace, these moments of faith that enter our hearts and reward us. Here, look, this is the image that, in my opinion, speaks volumes. It's a crowd, not anonymous. It's an identity-based following. It's a painful presence, because these people suffer seeing the mainstream and then the enemies who leave pointing the finger, saying we're a sect, that we're fanatics, that we're Mary worshippers, that we've made our own church, that we're making money, that we're making fun of people. This is a people who suffer for this continuous defamation that the devil, Satan, because the devil wants to destroy. This no longer works. The work grows because it's not mine. Let my detractors know the work is not mine and that of the Holy Virgin. And this is a huge thanks, as vast as the universe, to the brothers who believe in us, who resist internal and external aggressions to distance them from me. This is the moment when, naturally, I don't have to summarize yesterday's meeting now, because it was an appointment that needs to be seen. Well, we started at 2:30 in the afternoon. We finished at 7 p.m. You do the math on how many hours that is, and find me a Christian kermesse that meets for so many hours. And above all, I'd like to say, what did we do? Have we invoked the spirits? Have we done a witch's dance? What did we do? What did these people do yesterday? They prayed the rosary, gave themselves to Mary. They received the blessing of the families. This is the moment when Don Enrico distributes the Gospels to the families. They received the Gospels, then there was the floral tribute to the Blessed Virgin, it being the 8th of December. Finally, the Holy Mass in the traditional rite on the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception, celebrated superlatively by Don Pavel with the magisterial homily of Brother Celestino. And then, after Father Ramon, the Blessed Sacrament was solemnly exposed, and we held a Eucharistic procession in the hall. That's what we did. Tell me, what's sectarian about it? But why don't you reflect on this, those of you who are convincing yourselves that this is a sectarian work? Look at this marvel. And those who were here yesterday didn't want to leave when I finished and said that a feeling mixed with joy and nostalgia accompanied us almost regretful at having to conclude the meeting, and even though a bit tired, going away. One last thing I'd like to say is this. Amongst the many initiatives to delegitimize the small remainder, besides the fact that the numbers are decreasing, and this is evident yesterday there was, besides the fact that we always check the numbers of Radio Domina Nostra's listenership on the YouTube channel, and my collaborators confirmed to me that there has been a decrease. First, second, the numbers speak for themselves. Well, the room wasn't empty. The hall's huge. Who could possibly fill a hall that size? If not Our Lady, it's not Don Minutella, it's not Don Enrico Fra Celestino, it's not Don Ramon, it's not Don Pavel, it's not Father Johannes, who unfortunately couldn't be present. We said our affectionate goodbyes. But it's Our Lady who does this. In fact, we carried her in procession at the beginning to show our love for the Blessed Virgin, because this is the people of the Rosary, the people of Mary. And it was yesterday, in fact, that we experienced a moment of grace when Don Ramon and Don Enrico, we signed the Register of the Holy Rosary Confraternity, the people of the Rosary. So on the sidelines of this, I'd like to say something else, while we look at that image there, which is so dear to me, of this Marian people, of this people who have remained Catholic, of this people who do not stop. Look, see, there are thousands of faithful. We're not playing games, we're not playing games. One important thing I'd like to say, all this doesn't seem to me, I hope it doesn't appear as a polemic. It's a narrative of struggle. It's exomologisis in Greek. That is, it's a narration of faith, a story of faith. This morning we're sharing our faith without any polemic against anyone or whoever, but I'd like to say one thing: the numbers aren't decreasing. So, if these latest initiatives, and everyone will understand what I'm referring to, were to have come about, this is the moment to sign the register of the Holy Rosary Confraternity. We're at about 1,100, but I'm sure we'll grow. It'll be an impressive undertaking that will go down in history, because all of this will go down in history. I was saying that clearly the work of disposal and destruction, as well as the treatments in Little Nazareth, hasn't succeeded. Today I'll finally speak my mind clearly. Tractors and lorries came to clear it, like in Soviet times, Little Nazareth, thinking that the work would be finished that way. The work's not only unfinished, it's grown. It's grown because we have the Ave Maria Center, the Santa Maria della Gioia Center, and so on. In my opinion, what's happened from October to now, what's happening around us, is a further attempt at destruction. Plan B, we're at war. So I say, in my opinion, but I repeat, contra factum non valet argumentum, that yesterday's images should confirm that the attempt to destroy the identity of the small remnant to detach the people from their Nutella homeland has failed, because the Madonna doesn't allow it. So let the enemies of yesterday and today come to terms with this, fully understand it, because as you can see, there's a people who won't stop and will only grow stronger, because truth is self-spreading. When I see these attempts to destroy the work, to create alternative routes, some going this way, others that way, some taking a position over there, and we're treated as if we don't exist, I remain fairly calm, because I think about this. Slowly, in a Thomistic way, that is, bonum diffusivum sui, which could also be said, veritas diffusiva sui, that is, truth and goodness, spread of themselves. So Brother Celestine is right when he claims millions of faithful, not thousands, will come. They will come because this is understood. The other thing I'll say about this page is about yesterday's Milan gathering, which makes history, joins history with the rest. This is a story the newspapers don't talk about. Shame on them. Because one day it will come out that the newspapers didn't talk about it because of ideological roots, because of an ideological stance, because if serious information can't help but state that in Milan, in secular Milan, you understand, not in Loreto or Pompeii, but in Milan, the Milan of drinking, the Milan where people run, the Milan where Delpini, the Bishop of Milan, on the 7th of December, gave a speech, in my opinion, splendid, in which he said that the economy isn't enough, and Milanese people are forced to run around without any sense of purpose. So he said that we want to be, I'm getting goosebumps. In some cases, Delpini speaks like the Pope, I'm telling you. He's one of the few Delpinis in Milan, Mario Delpini, who speaks like a pontiff. Sounds like a church father speaking. He said that we have the task of bringing not simply support to economic processes, to environmental protection processes, things that incidentally he doesn't exactly deny. But he says we have a duty. It behoves us to bring meaning to the Milanese people, because he's the Bishop of Milan. And yesterday I'd like this to reach the Archbishop of Milan with all due respect. Yesterday, Your Excellency, I say this out of the deep respect I hold for you. Yesterday we brought meaning to Milan. Let that sink in, because why do Don Minutella and his brothers manage to fill a hall this size? Ask yourself that. Perhaps no. Definitely. We were more than there were in Milan Cathedral for St. Ambrose's Day. Definitely that. Don't they care? I think so. I think so. If Monsignor Delpini, who speaks a bit like the Pope, says that in a fast-paced Milan, in a Milan with standards to be upheld, we, he says as bishop, we are obliged to offer a meaning that is Jesus Christ. Well, Your Excellency, there you have it. Father Minutella, with his brothers, filled a cathedral yesterday, a cathedral like this one, with more people than you. Your Excellency, look at these images and try to reflect. If we were to arrive at the solution that Bergoglio isn't the Pope, that there's a false church trying to destroy the Catholic heritage, and that we might start again from scratch, perhaps with us. I don't mean just us, but perhaps with us. Well, I still haven't said the most important thing. What's more important? Among the most important things, because everything I've said is important. That is, yesterday there was a crowd, our detractors, those wretched, dishonest people, say, a crowd of elderly people. I'd like you then, on your own, I'm not talking about the people who were at the Milan meeting yesterday. But how many of you were at home realized how this is also dishonest misinformation, a malevolent satanic narrative to delegitimize the small remainder? Because it seems to me from the images you are seeing that there were families. Pay attention to the small remainder. Someone sooner or later will stop this media censorship and reflect, will raise the question, as happened for other events here. Your Excellency, Monsignor Delpini, I would like to say that what happened in 1970s Milan with the founder of CL, Don Giussani, is happening again. Certainly, the approaches differ in form. One's more cultural, the other more popular, if you will. But the substance is there. In Milan yesterday, something happened that also occurred in the 70s with CL. Why is no one talking? Why doesn't anyone tackle it? And there's a diverse population. There are families there. Is it possible they have to keep treating us all like fanatics? But this people could be a people. Those fanatics follow that guy crumbling in Rome. The real fanatics, the real sectarians, are all those who follow the impostor in Rome. And watch out for the newcomers who tell you it makes no difference whether you go to Mass with or without. It's not indifferent at all. It's decisive. This is the kind of Catholic people who don't put their foot in it. Look at this couple here. This couple came from Switzerland. They've traveled many miles, because I almost know them one by one, even though there are thousands. The shepherd knows his sheep. They've traveled thousands and hundreds of miles to come. So, as a final thought, we should all reflect on the fact that there's only one truly small remainder, and all the others are human initiatives. I say so because I believe it and I'm sure of it. All the other initiatives, if they don't, at the very least, land as I requested, well before the outings started emerging, orchestrated by who knows who. I had asked for collaboration with us, because we're the first. Being first means we deserve respect. Because if someone else comes along, proposing to save the church in any way, and they sideline us and censor us and deliberately forget about us, it means they're acting in bad faith. Right? He's acting in bad faith, won't help. They want to create something alternative. The attempt to create something alternative to the little Catholic remainder comes from the devil, whoever carries it forward. Remember these words of mine. I'm now addressing not only everyone, but especially the faithful of the little remnant. That is to say, be aware that all present and future attempts are motivated solely by the work of Satan, who wants to destroy the little remnant. Got it? The small change. I mean, God is free to choose whomever he wants. When he picks, he picks. It's not as if Canaan came along and said, we are God's chosen people. No, God's chosen are Israel. Enough. It's not that when, remember, Jesus chose the 12 apostles, among whom there was that one, I always remember Judas Iscariot. Betrayal is a constant satanic and diabolical attempt to destroy God's works. The devil's finest trick. It began with Jesus Christ himself, by divine permission. One more thing. Do you remember when that man who was possessed was healed and asked Jesus to follow him? And Jesus doesn't allow him, because there are the disciples. He's not called to be part of the apostolic circle. He tells him to go home. What do I mean by this? My dear children of the little remnant, sursum corda, forward together. I'd put out a call for you to come. You came. and your response has been simply extraordinary, given the current climate. No one fills a hotel room with thousands of people like yesterday. So, my dear children, I tell you, we are the small remnant, the one God willed, the one chosen by Our Lady. Then others are born. Others are born for goodness' sake. It's not like we're under some kind of regime here. But they should use honest methods, not act like scoundrels saying that Don Minutella wants to be the Pope, that Don Minutella is creating his own church, because then through them the saint speaks. First of all, because it's not true, and secondly, because it interferes with God's work. Because even the enemies know at this point that after all the trials and tribulations, all the attempts, all the plots, all the satanic initiatives to destroy the work, yesterday, the 8th of December, this happened. They should reflect and say, hold on a minute. Honestly, it's a miracle. Here's the work of God. You wretched people, you haven't even got the wisdom of Gamaliel. In the Acts of the Apostles, when they wanted to attack the apostles, right from the start, the Sanhedrin, Gamaliel, who was an elder and wise according to Maria Valtorta, was an admirer of Jesus. Gamaliel said, wait a minute, if this work comes from God, it will stand. If it comes from men, it will fall. Watch out for those creating alternative circles to the one true small remnant. I'm warning you, you'll end up on your backsides because you're going against God's work. You'll come to a bad end because you're acting against God's plan. I told you so. Then you see Gamaliel says, if this work comes from men, it will end. Wow, it's 8 years we've had the establishment, the mainstream media, the whole world against us, and yesterday we managed to do that? No one considers the possibility that God's hand might be at work here, that the Holy Virgin is truly present, that this is truly the small remnant from which we can begin again, as Cardinal Caffarra said. No one thinks that, no, they think it and get angry. Full of pride, they won't bow their heads to admit Don Minutella's calling to lead this, so we're stuck here. No, they create other little kings. Know what they'll write? I get angry. I couldn't care less what you write. I raise my voice not because I'm angry, to shake your consciences. You can't say this wasn't said when you set foot on the threshold of the Eternal Father. This is the small remainder. Everything else that springs up around it is merely a counterfeit. Gamaliel tells the Sanhedrin, which had put Jesus Christ to death, that if this work comes from men, it will end in the city. Judas, a certain Judas the Galilean, I think they were called that. Anyway, a couple of unknown characters besides, and this speaks volumes, that in that period they had, so Jesus also had his, let's say, detractors, even when he came to earth. So, I was saying they had also tried to make a messianic counterfeit. And rightly Gamaliel says to the Sanhedrin, Acts of the Apostles and Word of God, if this work comes from men, it will end. But if it comes from God, beware, beware, beware. Everyone working tirelessly, night and day, on the phone, all day calling left, right, and center, maintaining contacts, diplomatic networks, initiatives, petitions, appeals. But then, do you actually make a petition to be received in audience? But I'm seeing things that are turning into a joke. I've never heard of a petition to be received by a cardinal. You don't petition. Your Eminence, they request an audience. Will you see me? What kind of initiatives are these? Careful. Because if this work, as you're thinking, comes from Don Minutella, who wants to be the Pope, who wants to be the great prelate, who shows himself off, who built his own church, who speaks with the Madonna, who's a Madonnaro, who's formed his own sect, who's built his own church, then you're right. Even if you should explain everything that happens before your very eyes. But God forbid. This work that Don Minutella carries on with his brothers comes from God. You're working against God, even with your seemingly good initiatives, pretending we don't exist. Got it? They're creating them, using our methods. The outings, the hidden networks. But what do you think? Because we don't know these things, they create their hidden priestly networks, associates, common ground. The glue that binds them together is hatred, rage, satanic rage against Don Minutella, who despite everything continues and has this consensus, not because Don Minutella is good, maybe he is by God's will, but this work has this consensus because it's Our Lady who carries these initiatives forward. It's a people, families. Yesterday I was left speechless, my dear children. But why not? I could cry. But the things I saw yesterday, my goodness, last night I went back to my little room. To be honest, I couldn't wait to go back to be with myself. My goodness, what a wonderful evening I had. What extraordinary thoughts. But the things I saw yesterday, how lovely when the meeting ended. These faithful people who came to besiege Fra Celestino, Don Enrico, Don Ramon, and then of course myself. How lovely, people kissing your hand, asking for your blessing. Who hugs you? Who kisses you? Someone leaves lipstick on me. Someone else holds me so tight I can't breathe. Someone runs their hands over my face. Someone holds my hand and won't let go, signing the book. And a people, young people, men, children, and me, as I was greeting them, this is the moment I was entering. The children were brought to me. I really thought of the scene of Jesus and, well, my dear children, yesterday we experienced a moment of paradise, I believe, from the point of view of experience, because now I'm starting to have it, a certain experience, wouldn't you agree? That this, and I decided today to talk about the Blessed Virgin, but now, looking at the Holy Spirit, we'll change the title midstream. Let's call it The Window. The true little remnant, it's us. The true little remnant, it's us. That's the title of today's episode. At this point, because I'm finishing like this, I was saying that from the point of view of experience itself, look at these images. These images are not innocent, neither for us who are part of them, because they move us and encourage us to and keep going, and they're not harmless for our enemies either, because they make them even angrier. And you want to see that the heavens allow that, because those whom God wants to lose, He first drives mad. They go mad. The mainstream's mad, not talking about it. Rai and Mediaset only mentioned it briefly, just to come and butt heads at my door, spouting nonsense. They told them, I don't know what, you know these things, you have to tell them every time. The mainstream's angry, the Bergoglian establishment's angry, because there in Rome, they saw, there in the Vatican, in the secret rooms of Santa Marta, someone looked on behalf of a third party, all right? And they were waiting, you see, to witness yet again the failure, the flop of Don Minutella. They were calling for it, begging for it. This failure by Don Minutella angers the establishment, si arrabbia, l'anti-establishment. Because now there's an anti-small remainder, and two things prove it's anti. Firstly, they create a work bypassing and offending us. They create a work on their own initiative without involving us. Absolutely rude. Utterly rude. They came into our house to take the sheep, stupid sheep, they fell for it, worse for them. Then they suggest going to Mass in union with Pope Francis. I heard Don Cornet say things out of this world. I won't repeat them, I've left it to Don Enrico to comment when he has time. But he says things bordering on madness. He says, you who aren't in union with Pope Francis, go. There's just recording, go to Mass. Entering the church, you say to the Lord, I'm not in communion with that scoundrel 𝐥'𝐞𝐾. They're joking, and naturally people take the easiest route. I would have also suggested doing what that Neapolitan woman told us, making horns under the table when the name of Pope Francis is mentioned. So there's a first act of dishonesty, a real professional, intellectual, and conscientious dishonesty on the part of these newcomers who are allying themselves amongst them, bypassing us, going further. And then the other reason I find even more significant is the content, that is, these appeals to the right and left, to Cardinal this and Cardinal that. I've been told that in one of the petitions Cardinal Paul was addressed, it was pointed out, but he's not a cardinal because Bergoglio made him one. Yes, it's true, but the form is important, you understand? Dear children, everyone can choose what they want. I'll just say the little one goes on alone. Here I thank the director for changing the title. The real small remainder is us. It's the only real small remainder. These latest initiatives, which it seems are emerging again, want to continue and are continuing, but why in opposition? Why not try a collaborative approach? They say I raised my voice. What else could I do? In the face of those who would slaughter the lambs, I'll bleat or bark or roar. Ah, dear ones, I got a small lion, which was found in an Easter egg at Easter, and they wanted to bring this little lion to show their support. They thought of me at Easter and kept it until yesterday to give it to me. I roar and then write whatever you want. You're dishonest, claiming I seek to be Pope, and I'm angry. Angry about what? But what have you taken from us? Look at these images and tell me what you've taken away. We, with the brothers of the sodality, have written a constitution. The priests, if they wish, can come out. The work is now clear. Thousands of faithful exist because, I repeat, yesterday in Milan, on a holiday like the 8th of December, thousands of people were present on a holiday, but many were not present due to the fact that airfares are prohibitive. Look, this is the moment of communion. Everyone on their knees, everyone receiving. This is a faithful from Palermo, dear Francesco, someone even arrived from Sicily. Few. And these moments of grace make one important thing clear. There's an identity. This is a small remaining identity that suffers from these continuous attacks. Then on the other hand, if we had worked together, I think, better now. I mean, it's like we're all against Bergoglio, who isn't the Pope, a smart choice. Sorry, Don Minutella, we have to acknowledge you, you ungrateful wretches. Then they say I'm angry because I want primacy, because he's robbing me. But what are you robbing me of? You wretched enemies from first to last, but you're truly wretched because you know you're dishonest and full of hate. But what are you robbing me of? You can't steal God's grace from me, God's love, the mission God has entrusted me with through the Madonna. These things are unshakable. You're the muggers until proven otherwise. If you'd been clever, those you're now allying yourselves with, you should have done something even more intelligent. If you wanted to pretend to be with me and then later launch the best attack. Instead, you went in head first and failed. You've already failed because God isn't with you. God won't let you keep the change. Don't you believe me? You'll come down on me for what I'm saying. You'll feel even more resentment. You work all day and all night at the desk, writing, phoning, posting, announcing news that might cause a stir in an attempt to delegitimize the little remainder, Don Minutella, because all the priests had to sign. A constitution written by a journalist, we're at that level, I don't know. And people don't think. If 8 priests, we were still 8 at the time, had to sign a constitution written by a journalist. So among these priests, there's a canon lawyer like Father Johannes, there's a double theologian like Don Minutella. There are others who all have expertise, you see. And we were supposed to sign. Since we didn't sign it, we're in the wrong. I don't know, kids. We're at the funny part now. Reminds me when they called me the little rascal. If they were smarter, let me say, we step in and contact Don Minutella. He was first. No one can claim otherwise. Facts show Don Minutella was first historically. Sure, if I make the first pattern, others might do better, but I was first. No denying that. If they were smart, they should have done this. Wait, are we teaming up? There's a partnership, but there's a small remainder that exists. There's a work we think isn't from God, because that's what they think. They're convinced it's not from God and that it's only Don Minutella's work. But then, without realizing it, you idolize Don Minutella, because Don Minutella is capable of this. He's a hero, a champion of bygone times. Instead, the work is God's. So you should have done this. And in the diversity of some perspectives, we would have walked together. We would have walked together because we are united by our common battle against Bergoglio. Then, of course, at the Battle of Vienna, When the Muslims were at the gates, Jan Sobieski arrived from Poland with the soldiers of Our Lady of Częstochowa, and he wanted his share from the rear. He entered from the rear ranks. Instead, the Austrian army was the phalanx, head on, and then there was the army of the gleaners, including some Protestants who went on the flank. The council was our foe, damn it. They wouldn't accept this common battle. Am I wrong? And they say it's my fault. How could it be mine? Excuse me. You're here to fight against Bergoglio and you want me to like it? Who's writing all these petitions now? She told me twice to rest and step back. Now she can rest. Witnesses here, I asked. Good. Luckily, I kept records early on in case they'd deny it. I've been asked to step aside a couple of times. Here's the point. Carrying on without Don Minutella. I'm sorry, but God doesn't want it. I'm sorry for you. I've arrived at this point not to defend the work and defend the mission. But God knows, even if those here think I'm doing this, it wouldn't interest me, because I know why I'm saying this. God doesn't want a small remainder that isn't guided by Don Minutella. So you're the big prelate or not? That's a different matter altogether, because this whole story about the great prelate, which so worries the enemies of the first and last hour, those who write petitions left and right, they should know that he's not some legendary mythical figure. The great prelate is simply someone who, in a season of deception, encourages the faithful. Please, if you are wise, bow your heads and have the humility to say that we are wrong. Because the images you are seeing should perhaps, if you were intelligent, make you doubt that perhaps Don Minutella is truly that mythical figure for you, instead of being an absolutely pastoral type, who is encouraging the faithful to move forward during the time of the great imposture of Bergoglio's false church, and to safeguard the Catholic faith. Why did you go your own way? Why did you refuse a public confrontation? Why didn't you want to meet me? Why, when I expressed my point of view, did you immediately go and ally yourselves against me? What did you think, that Don Minutella would bow down to your decisions? Oh, my dears, here's a task the Madonna has entrusted to me. You can tell a tree by its fruit. The attempt is precisely to delegitimize the small remainder. How the bulldozers arrived in Little Anzio to destroy, other kinds of bulldozers arrived, in suits and ties or in clerical garb, to try to discredit the small remainder. I had to be called a Judas Iscariot, traditore, imbonitore, disrespectful. I use strong, irreverent tones. I don't follow him anymore because he shouted, "You don't do that. Go on. Go ahead. I know how to do it." Jesus said, "Learn from me, who am meek and humble of heart." But after he made the rope and chased the vendors from the temple, even throwing all the temple benches to the ground and shouting, "Don't make the temple a house." So how do we put it? What about those of you who went for Don Minutella's strong tones? "Learn from me," said Jesus, "for I am meek and humble of heart." Right? But in the temple he took away, and it doesn't seem to me that Jesus was so meek and humble of heart at that moment. I mean, when he says, "Brood of vipers, white sepulchres," then there's a moment where, you see, von Balthasar says, "It's tough for you to go against me. Watch out, I'm telling you, you'll be smashed to smithereens. Priests, you'll be crushed. It's just a matter of time." I'm saying this so you'll humbly admit we should have worked as one, despite our views. Von Balthasar says that Jesus Christ, as the gestalt of the Father, that is, the divine, human divine, theandric form, carries with him all the subsequent charisms in the Church. Therefore, von Balthasar says that in the Church there are figures like Athanasius of Alexandria, to give just one example, and even before him, John the Baptist. But there are also figures like John the Apostle and Evangelist, and figures like Saint Benedict of Nursia. In the Church, there are figures like Blessed Marco d'Aviano, and figures like Francis of Assisi, the man of peace. These all always draw on the charisms from the single, original source, which is Jesus Christ, who is meek and humble of heart, like a lamb led to the slaughter. Yet he drives the vendors from the temple and cries out that the Pharisees are whitewashed tombs. Get what I mean? So sometimes you need that fatherly behavior, gentle, loving, like any family father does. But if a family father doesn't thump the table, doesn't raise his voice when it's necessary, it's no longer authentic fatherhood, it's ruined. And I am like that. I'm a father, I'm a shepherd, and so I shout and make it known. Then I'd like to thank, with all of you, Our Lady, those who were present yesterday, but also, and above all, those who followed from home and would have liked to be there, and for many reasons couldn't, especially from central and southern Italy. Because yesterday, we breathed this atmosphere of communion, and so together we move forward. If these last and even remote betrayals had been avoided, today we would be even more. But I have come to a consideration. God doesn't want, thank God, He doesn't want doubters. God looks into hearts when suspicion is cast on Don Minutella, and anger, annoyance, antipathy arise, because they don't want him to lead, because they want him to step aside, because he needs to rest, because he's exaggerated, because he sees Our Lady, etc., etc., etc. God provides, then they build their shacks. Those are shacks, you understand? Careful, the initiatives of the little that's left, they're shacks, understand? They're shacks, you'll see. It's only a matter of time. And here we're not talking about numbers, because they might achieve those too. I wish them all the best if they want to, although I hope not for the common good. All right? It's not about numbers or prominence, though they might gain some. For example, Don Minutella was never mentioned. When Don Ramon emerged, it made headlines worldwide, till they found he'd joined Minutella, ending his story. Since Father Ferre came out, everyone's talking about it. So they might already have higher media exposure than Don Minutella does, because Don Minutella doesn't have any media exposure at all. In fact, he has negative media exposure. But that's not what matters here. The real question is where God is. Because now we must ask ourselves, is God truly with those who just left, or did he stay with Don Minutella? Because it can't be here and there. It can't be with those who say, don't go to Mass with heretics like we do, don't set foot in Bergoglio's churches, and also be with those who say, if you can, go to Masses where Bergoglio isn't, otherwise go anyway. God can't be in both places at once. The Holy Spirit can't act on both sides. So this is the moment of choice. There are also further plots, and the techniques are always the same. Phoning, they've been doing it for years, house to house, friend to friend, friends to friends, friends to colleagues. Then they make people believe that we are always people of the people. There are so many people of the people. I invite you to have respect for those who have shown disrespect for this, and it shocks me that they are priests doing it. But above all, know that we also have lawyers, doctors, professionals, and so forth. The rest is varied. The rest is mixed. I'd also like to thank on the side all those who worked to make yesterday's meeting a success. I'd also like to thank the benefactor who gave us the panettone, which everyone happily ate. I didn't expect that. Thank goodness they enjoyed it, because it was delicious, really delicious. So thank you to the benefactor who wishes to remain anonymous. Right? And then I'd like to remind you of a number of events alongside this reflection, which I hope will make everyone think, especially the enemies. Make the mainstream media, which continues to ignore us and then sends journalists to my doorstep to constantly try to defame me and throw me to the wolves, think. It makes you think, the Vatican establishment pretending we don't exist, them too, and it makes you think above all, the new shacks of the pseudo-small remains. Careful, pseudo-small remnants are emerging, they've appeared. They want to counterfeit, like the Nutella brand. VERO exists, and then there are lots of Nutellas, none resembling the real one. And it's no coincidence that my name is Minutella. Minutella Ferrero is me. The others are just counterfeits. Time will tell. It will prove me right, as it always has. I urge you to reflect. Then everyone can do as they please. Let them go their own way. We're not interested in intervening. As you can see, we're not interested in doing what they're doing against us. Because in their channels, and as they tell me, showing me, because I don't have the time, Then they send me screenshots. They abuse me in a truly diabolical way. Because they're telling lies, saying I want to be the Pope. That I get angry because Father now takes himself to all the people. They won't have noticed that a couple of thousand are missing. While we're on our channels, I'm keeping an eye on that. We won't stoop to those offensive criticisms. Criticism is constructive when it's serious, respectful, and honest. Above all, honest. But when it's dishonest and you know it's dishonest, then you have to bypass it and move on. From those who make petitions left and right, comments like, "But he speaks with the Madonna," are hosted. Then they qualify themselves. They self-qualify. When they say around there that Minutella is a cult leader who built his own church because we didn't sign the statute, 7 priests, 8 priests of a journalist. Well, it's all clear then. Watch out for Uncle Tom's Cabins. Okay, if you've seen the novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, I say it, then they'll have, I think, because over there, someone knows how to play and juggle communication techniques, thinking they'll have more of an advantage, they'll get a certain prominence. I think so. They'll have numbers and do good things. But that's not how you judge the work. Only one thing matters. Where is God? Where's God's finger? At this point, seeing as there are now new alternative paths to the only true little remnant, which is us, we must ask ourselves, if God is with them too, then he's not with us anymore. So what did we do before? Nothing. We played games. These people came to play. We told each other jokes. We played tombola. And then we ate the panettone. Or perhaps this is the small remainder that God has chosen, that the Madonna accompanies and therefore wants everyone to attack this small remainder, accepting the leadership, because, excuse me, I want to say here in defiance of my enemies, who are also a bit stupid, what I'm about to say. But now that they're getting together, how does it work? Anarchy. Or is there someone already playing the big prelate without letting on? Am I getting this wrong? Think. They've been challenging me for years because I guide the little remnant. And they started with the priests first, and then with the lay faithful. But he wants to be in charge. He wants to be the Pope. But he wants to be the leader. He wants to pilot me. This only because, evidently, Our Lady chooses one, to whom others then flock. St. Dominic came, and Dominicans rose. St. Francis came first, and Francis grew. Here's the guide to Minutella's remnant, and thus it begins. My fellow priests, bless them, have patience with me. I'm a bit difficult, but I must be, for God's mission. I'm here battling while they're not even on air yet. But watch out, you who are building your huts with pseudo-small remains, I ask. But isn't it true that you too have your great prelate? Unmentionable. But isn't it true that in your parts there's someone who, after having been highlighted, donned the robes of a great prelate? Who organizes things, gets the priests together, initiates projects, Here, we need to understand whether the devil isn't just trying to create a small alternative remainder, but also in the long run, an anti-high prelate. The devil's cunning, even if he forgets the lids. So this battle against the dishonest undersigned in alternative channels, because they say insults. I always remember the insult made to my parents, who died this year. I remember it. And I'm ashamed that Dr. 𝐥'𝐤𝐻 hasn't removed this defamation, because it's truly shameful, shameful, shameful. We don't do things like that, never do. I'm made the villain here, they're all upset, and I'm the one. So, what I also wanted to say to some of you, a few who might feel a bit embarrassed by these outbursts of mine, know this. For those of you who always know a bit more than the devil, something important. Don Minutella's not laying low to stir trouble. He's doing this to make appeals. It seems to me that today's broadcast, following yesterday's event, is making things even clearer. Here, this is important to say. Just one tiny bit remains. There can't be more. At the limit, there could be parallel works, like the armies at the Battle of Vienna. Parallels, that is concurrent, not competing. Not antagonists, because if they're antagonists, they come from the devil. even if they fight against Bergoglio. But you see, the enemy of my enemy becomes my friend. Careful, it could end up like this, that the enemy of my enemy becomes my friend. And this proceeding slowly to ask the cardinal fellow for a meeting, are all the cardinals Bergoglian, or am I wrong? Oh no, they're pre-Bergoglio pics. What's that mean? My name's Bergogliani. They joined Pope Francis with a wrong conscience. Oh, the cardinal. The cardinal's conscience is flawed, but will you stop sending consciences? Got it. So then all these go slowly, slowly. But the enemy of my enemy, I don't know if you understand, becomes my friend. I fear these changes will fade once Bergoglio's gone, leading them to join this false church that lives on after him. I believe this risk exists when they say to attend Mass with the false church, as its spiritual contamination. A big thanks to all our faithful remnant, guided by me who resist this smear campaign. Then it's quite true, the very last thing in the gospel and in the Catholic tradition, then nobody has yet answered my question as to how that can be the Catholic Church going against apostolic tradition. But anyway, I wanted to say that in the gospel, in the apostolic tradition of the saints, it always emerges that the more a work is opposed, the more it flourishes. That's God's logic. It's God's logic. A wheat grain fell to earth. I imagine that if he hadn't had all these persecutions, criminal proceedings, convictions, defamation, humiliations, mistreatment, betrayals, continuously, many of you have been following me for these 8 years. It's truly a story that in some ways surpasses even that of Padre Pio in terms of what he suffered. But if this hadn't happened, perhaps it would have seemed a bit squalid. Because we're not made to seek human approval, we're made to carry on God's work, which includes the mystery of the cross. So it's all grace, but be careful to have your eyes open, to be watchful, to have a conscience, to put it like Gamaliel. If this work is of men, sooner or later it will end, but if it comes from God, Gamaliel tells the Sanhedrin, do not try to fight it. Against the heavens, it's a plea I make to everyone, given the various initiatives that are emerging.